So whenever these reasons which disturbs your Vata dosh come into play, that can also be the reason of your frozen shoulder. That's why in Ayurveda a lot of importance has been given that you take your diet on time, you try to cook fresh meals and try to eat it within 3 hours of cooking. Include a lot of vegetables and fruits in your diet because they are very beneficial, and many of the fruits balance Vata dosh. So these are the small things which can lead to a Vata imbalance, and ultimately Vata dosh got lodged in your shoulder region and it can cause frozen shoulder. In addition to that, Ayurveda also give a lot of importance, like certain actions if you are doing that can lead to frozen shoulder. Overindulgence in excessive physical exercise. For example, if you are going to gym and you are indulging yourself very vigorously for long hours in a day, and extreme workout you are doing, that can also lead to Vata imbalance, and ultimately it will lead to frozen shoulder. If you happen to do wrestling with the man who is extremely powerful than you, then also that can lead to Vata aggravation, and ultimately it will lead to frozen shoulder. If somebody indulge himself in excessive swimming for many hours, rather than he is not professional swimmer and he is trying swimming in the very beginning, and he is indulging this himself in swimming for long hours, then that can also aggravate Vata, and ultimately it will lead to frozen shoulder. If somebody is sleeping with extremely wrong posture during the sleep in the bed, that can also eventually will lead to frozen shoulder. Actually what happens is, when this Vata dosh aggravated for the various reasons that I have mentioned, so what it will do, it will dry on the structures that are present inside the shoulder joint and the tissues surrounding it, which ultimately will lead to vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction means those arteries which supply blood to the shoulder region that got constricted. And when these got constricted, definitely when there is no proper supply, that means there will be no supply of nutrients properly to the shoulder, neither oxygen nor proper blood supply, because blood vessels got constricted because of excessive lodging of Vata at that place. So that definitely then the tissue in that area, that will start crying for pain because he is not able to get proper nutrients, and that slowly will started drying up, and ultimately it will restrict the shoulder movement, which you feel as like there is some restriction in the movement and there is a pain in the shoulder joint. In addition to that, there are certain other diseases also for which frozen shoulder can be a complication, or there are many times it happens there are underlying diseases for which frozen shoulder will become very common ailment. For example, diabetes people, hypertension. If somebody is having diabetes, it's frozen shoulder is most commonly seen in diabetes, and in hypertension. If somebody has hypertension also, frozen shoulder has been seen more commonly in these patients. If somebody has sometimes hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism, in these people also frozen shoulder is seen very commonly. In addition to that, somebody has cardiopulmonary ailments, then also this frozen shoulder is very common. Now the question comes, like how we will figure out what are the early signs of this frozen shoulder, and how we can figure out what is frozen shoulder, and how you can prevent your shoulder joint from not getting attacked by it. So first we will see what are the early signs and symptoms of this frozen shoulder, and how we can figure out by ourselves, like maybe it is frozen shoulder. No question about it that you need a diagnosis of a doctor, but it is always good to know disease by yourself, because the more you understand your disease, the more better judgment and help you can provide for that disease. That's why it becomes very important to just read and study more about that disease, or know your disease well, so that you can treat it well. The first thing that comes, what is the most common early symptom of that disease is you start feeling restricted movement of your shoulder joint. Like let's suppose you are taking your this hand back, you feel like there is some kind of restriction. For example, in the morning you get up and you want to do comb in your hair, but for some reason you are not able to take your hand up. So if this kind of movement restriction is happening, that can be very simple sign that maybe your shoulder is going towards frozen shoulder. So that means this is high time that you can start using preventive care, so your shoulder joint does not land up into frozen shoulder. And you please don't worry at all, because there are various ways and methods to deal with frozen shoulder, and it is not some kind of deadly disease. It's a very simple disease with which easily people can overcome by using little bit of precaution. So it is not some kind of very dangerous disease. It is just like I am explaining it so that you understand this disease well. Other symptoms which you feel like, maybe you feel like there is a stiffness in your shoulder joint. So you feel like your shoulder joint is not very flexible, and if you see like there is a restriction in the motion of shoulder joint, for example, you are not able to make this circle of this shoulder joint, that means maybe this is high time that we start using precautions to protect our shoulder joint. So let's see what Ayurveda has to do with this shoulder joint, and how Ayurveda can help you with this shoulder joint. Not only Ayurveda, in this frozen shoulder, even your yoga is extremely important. But before going for the treatment, or like how what are the things that we do in Ayurveda to protect your shoulder joint, it becomes extremely important that you get your proper diagnosis. And these are the things which I have said to create little bit information for you, but still it doesn't mean like you need not to go and visit your doctor. It is very, very important that you go and visit your doctor and take the proper checkup, and make sure like the disease, because in shoulder there can be many diseases. So whether the disease is definitely a frozen shoulder, or this pain is because of some other problem. So that thing is extremely important. Like I always say, self-diagnosis is not so good, self-medication is not so good, because we should always take the advice of professionals, because that help our journey extremely better. And once the thing get diagnosed, then we can use various things to come over that disease and to fight with that disease. But it is always beneficial to take help of medical professionals, because they know this disease much better than you. So it becomes extremely important.